Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So a very warm welcome to today's event. My name is Jillian Neeson. I manage one of our briefing centers for Citrix in London. I'm part of our executive engagement team, and I've been collaborating here with the Ultima events team to bring today's event to you. Today's event is really all about creating an integrated and scalable digital workspace. So as we've all seen in today's society and with the way that things have changed, we've seen unprecedented growth in the adoption of remote and hybrid working. And so Citrix and Microsoft have formed a new agreement for the delivery of integrated workspaces, offering the best user experience for accessing Microsoft 365 services, Teams, and Windows Virtual Desktop. So today, really, we're all about bringing together a conversation and a robust exchange of ideas with our subject matter experts so that we can showcase how Citrix and Microsoft have committed to the delivery of tools and services to simplify the journey of customers to consume Citrix Workspace and Microsoft Azure while delivering first-class integrator user experience. And this virtual event is really all about discussing the benefits of that partnership, covering how you can create a future-proof integrated digital workspace that enables your business to provide the agility required for today's fast-paced environment and deliver a seamless user experience. And in order to do that today, as I said, we've really brought together subject matter experts from the Citrix team and from the Ultima team that can really go through that discussion with you and showcase the opportunities for your business. So just to talk through the agenda. So just to begin, we're going to have a very quick introduction led by Gareth Meyer on the Ultima partnership with Citrix and Microsoft. We'll then hand over to Nikki Aiken from the Citrix team, who will go through the Citrix Microsoft Workspace partnership. At 10:45, we'll have a Citrix and Azure Cloud, the benefits of delivering an integrated workspace, led by Toby Brown. We'll have a quick break. And then we'll come back after the break at 11:20 to go through the end of perpetual licensing and a cloud strategy led by Andy McCulloch. Then at 11:45, we'll have a cloud transition and Citrix Cloud Success program led by Gareth Meyer. And we'll have at 11:55, Ultima's Workspace Innovations and Autonomous Workspace led by Michael Minerick. And then we'll really come together and have a panel of question and answers so that we can make sure that all of those questions that you have are answered. One note about questions, please do contribute to questions throughout the session. I will be monitoring the questions panel and alerting our discussion leaders to anything that comes up that's relevant in the sessions. And we'll make sure to make it as interactive as possible because the conversations really are best driven by your questions and what you're seeing for your business needs. But for any questions that aren't able to be discussed during every individual session, we will be able to come together at the end at 12:05 to have that panel Q&A and just make sure that we have that robust conversation. And then we'll end at 12:15. And a quick reminder that you will receive a Just Eat voucher to say thank you for spending your time with us. And please make sure that you do order that so you can have a lunch on Ultima and Citrix. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started and kick it off with Gareth Meyer. So just a very quick introduction to Gareth Meyer. He's the Commercial and Operations Director at Ultima. He's worked across the IT reseller industry for 18 years and held senior positions in the UK and Ireland with Insight, Invicta, and Systemax Europe prior to joining Ultima Business Solutions in October 2017. Gareth has held multiple sales, solution, and services leadership roles, focused on the corporate and enterprise customer segments, and is currently responsible for executing the strategic goals of Ultima by directing marketing, vendor strategy, and sales operations. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Gareth. Okay.
Hey, Julian, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I think that intro is better than the one I normally do, to be honest with you. So that's great for that. Thanks very much. So firstly, let me just get into presenter mode. Yeah, apologies. I hope you can see my screen okay. It should kick in a second.
Yep.
There we go. Can you see that?
We're still in the notes page, but yeah, there it is.
Okay, fantastic. I think we're all dependent on Wi-Fi today, with everyone still watching Netflix and so on else. So thank you so much, Julian, for the warm introduction. and thank you for the invite to sit here today. As Gillian mentioned, I'm the Commercial and Operations Director here at Ultima. I have been in the industry for a long time. I think Gillian just gave my age away. I hope I don't look as old as I seem. But today I've been asked to give you a brief introduction into Ultima Business Solutions, to give you a overview primarily on our partnership. I do look after the strategic strategy and our overarching revenue number. So I'm responsible for that core relationship, and we do rely on those vendors significantly. To give you an overview, a brief overview about our technical capabilities and our investment and why we continue to invest in our strategic partnerships. And then as we go further down the chain, I'll talk to you a bit about where Ultima is looking to go in the long-term view. I won't steal Andy or Michael's thunder because I know they got a very brief session after this with regards to adoption services as well as our own about to be launched autonomous workspace proposition. So a bit about Ultima. Ultima is this year turned 30 years old, so it's our anniversary. You know, we came from a proud heritage of becoming a reseller back in the day, where I think fundamentally to our business strategy was more around hardware and software. About 15 years ago, we built out a managed services proposition and quickly followed with professional services. So if I look at where we went to from that point in time, we're great strategic relations with the likes of Microsoft and Citrix and others, core focusing across on-prem solutions. And we built a fantastic practice to focus around core delivery services around their technology stack. In a nutshell, we are hugely technical. So we have roughly about 350 technical staff across our business. Those staff members are core consultancy delivery heads. So they really want to understand customers' sort of end goals and help customers go on that digital transformation journey, which we're all seeing most recently with regards to the global pandemic. We've got a very experienced, if I'm looking at the likes of Citrix and our Microsoft core capabilities, very experienced in modern workspace and I would say modern data center technology stacks. We are very proud of our technical certifications. We continue to invest in the space, but that allows us to scale and deliver core solutions as quickly as possible to our end customers, as you have joined us today. We have over 1,200 of those technical competencies. I've taken the sales element out of it. This is core technical competencies, and these are individual core technical competencies as well. So again, very, very proud of what our investment has allowed us to achieve. Our managed service practice is also very, very key and has actually allowed us to drive adoption very quickly across our business units. And we have around 150 managed services customers to date. It's obviously scales in time, and we haven't seen a huge increase as Workspace takes preference over on a global scale with regards to modernization of core technology stacks as well. One of the key areas I will touch on a little later is especially around our own automation, IP software development. It's absolutely key, and a lot of what's come from it has been around our capabilities from the core vendor stacks as well. Our core understanding of how we deliver, our core understanding of how those software platforms work, and how we integrate those together, using robotics as a primary function to automate a load of those processes on behalf of our customers and free up their technical staff to effectively get it back out there and deliver that true value add customer service back to their own employees internally. Some stats, I'm not going to read through them all. I really don't want to kill everyone by PowerPoint today. So I'll move on to the next slide with regards to some of our own software services. So as I mentioned prior, we are absolutely driving through automation, services, and infrastructure. Our heritage has always been big data center core project work. And most recently, we've taken on board automation to allow us to deliver these very quickly. Obviously, SaaS and the likes of Azure are core to our business strategy at Ultima. We've invested significantly with regards into our own Azure capabilities. We've invested internally into Azure significantly as well. So we absolutely live and breathe what we are advising our clients to also do. We fully understand that cloud might not be right for certain applications, but we're allowed to automate that as best as possible and deliver those services. And Andy will go on a bit later about how we do so in that sense. And then we wrap it around with services, regardless whether it's professional service or managed services. We really like to deliver that end-to-end user experience. So we'll start from architecture all the way through delivery, all the way onto managed services, and making sure you're getting the best out of your investment with regards to these core vendors and our own IP software as well. This is core to my area. So I'm responsible for the strategic vision when it comes to our core vendor stack. You'll notice it's very light when I talk about our strategic vendor relations. We have 8. And the reason for that is we truly invest in these. If I look at the technology investment around certifications, we must spend just shy of $750,000 a year in scaling up our consultancy divisions, our professional services heads, our engineering, as well as our managed service heads. So absolutely critical to the success and delivery of how we service our customer base. It was a decision of mine to move from a wider spread down to a smaller spread. And the reason for that is absolutely delivering on point, and you're getting the best value out from our consultancy business units as well. We've got fantastic relations. I mean, if I look at the stack across here, we've got some of the highest certifications we can possibly have. If I look at how we are able to scale from an agile point of view, because we have that skill set in-house. If you look, I'll talk a little bit about Cisco a bit later when we talk about adoption services. We were one of the fastest partners in the UK to get certified for their CX adoption program. And that's purely down to our in-house capabilities as well, and our absolute drive to support these vendors as they do us and our customer base. From a revenue point of view, it's not necessarily the vendor that is driving our onboarding, our customer relation. Everything we do at Ultima is driven from a consultancy professional services point of view. We have a plethora of other vendors that we do support. We've got a tier 1 stack as well, which all, they add value add to our strategic vendor stack as well. So as we continue to deliver, we're always looking at new technologies. We do take it very seriously. We've got a technical review board in place that we view all the new upcoming technology pieces. But again, we do focus primarily from service delivery point of view on these 8. And if you listen to Andy a bit later, you'll fully understand why we do so in that space. Our partnership. So these are the 2 vendors we're talking about today. This is why you've joined. So our core partnership, I'll start off talking about Citrix. We've got an amazing relationship with Citrix. We've got absolutely one of the highest pedigree from a partnership point. I'll talk a little bit later about some of our awards and so on else we've won, but we've got 20 years experience in this space, and that's delivering right across the modern workspace technology stack, as well as the Citrix's networking capabilities. So we do absolutely strive in our partnership here. We've accumulated 17 certifications. I double-checked this number this morning with our vendor alliance team, and we have just shy of 170 technical certs as well. So again, it really shows our investment point from a Citrix point of view. We're invested in their future strategies. We're on their executive boards. We're constantly meeting with them, and we're constantly taking clients across to sit down. We have our own POC environments where we can service our customer base. So we've absolutely, if you are looking at Citrix with Ultima, you're in the right hands to do so. And then I'll talk about Microsoft as well, but one of our strongest partners, one of our longest heritage partners, to be honest with you. So we are Microsoft LSP Gold partner. LSP effectively means we can deliver enterprise solutions, but we've got a multitude of competencies across their stack. So that's 13. I speak to it's one of the highest certification levels you can potentially get. I think they've got around 46 across their stack. However, for 13, I can assure you we've got where we can deliver, and we absolutely deliver in line with those gold competencies. We don't just get them for the sake of badges. We absolutely invest to deliver those services. And then we've got 300 plus certifications. That number goes up and down as we flex. But again, as I mentioned before, there's a clearly technical set of certifications for our consultancy business unit and our specialist licensed consultancy teams as well. So we have a small team that focused on this area, around 8 from Microsoft licensing point of view, but then we've got a huge technical capability from pre-sales consultancy all the way to engineering as well. We focus on some of their core apps. We're always looking at their modern technologies, and in the press in the next couple of months, you'll see a huge transformation within our own Azure practice as well, which has led us on to delivering our own IP with the likes of things like Autonomous Cloud, which we took to market around 6 months ago, and continue to drive that through and utilize that platform internally in our managed services stack to deliver automation as fast as possible within our Azure managed service customers. We're also a fast track ready partner. So it was one of our start to the journey of adoption services, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm just pressed or conscious of time, Gillian. I'm not too sure how much I have left. There's no timer showing up here, so.
You're okay. You've got a few more minutes.
Perfect. So I was speaking about our relationship with the likes of Citrix. I feel it's absolutely prominent that we share our achievement as Ultima in partnership and collaboration with Citrix. So in 2019, we won the prestigious award of World Partner of the Year. This is split across 3 regions, and it was absolutely great success to the team. That was purely around our transformation of customers from that traditional on-premise space into cloud by adoption, and also driving their modern technology stacks across Workspace. So, it's an amazing achievement that a smaller reseller or solution provider in the UK was up against at a global scale, and we're awarded that prestigious award. So really sits well in where we are going with our strategic vendors and the amount of investment both parties are playing in our relationship to drive that. Last year, and I think this is absolutely key to the success of Ultima and Citrix, we won EMEA-wide Partner of the Year for their modern workspace. We grew 470%. We delivered copious amounts of projects across the globe. As we move into a SaaS-based play, we're not hindered by the fact that we don't have global presence in the Americas or APAC regions. It allows us to actually truly deliver and allows you to scale as a customer base. So again, and it's very prominent, the recent times that we've had with regards to the global pandemic, this played true in how we deliver successful transformation projects within the customer base to enable and empower their end users at the best of the quality, and in today's time, that's absolutely correct in what we're seeing. Our Citrix collaboration continues to strive upwards as we continue to deliver those services across the customer base. I know this is a very busy slide, and Gillian, I'm hoping everyone's going to get access to this video at a later stage or the actual deck at the end of this. This shows a bit about Ultima's IP and our code development and automation transformation we've gone through. So as I said from the start, we really started to look after infrastructure. That's where our pedigree lay. As we've moved across automation, we've realized SaaS and cloud-based services are absolutely correct for us as a business as well as the customers. And we've evangelized all the technologies that our core strategic vendors play in this area. You'll notice that we've had huge investment in the likes of ServiceNow and our own ITSM platform. We've had massive investment with regards to our RPA automation processes. We were one of the leaders to start with that area, which has allowed us to create our own IP that Michael will talk a little bit later about when we talk about Autonomous Workspace. But we're looking at how do we automate the networking space on behalf of customers? How do we manage that? How do we keep you compliant? The same goes for our cloud services. We are very, very prominently focused on Azure. We have capabilities to do like AWS and so on else. They're a great partner of ours. However, we can only be a pedigree in one sort of area. So Autonomous Cloud was built on the back of that. And then Autonomous Workspace, Autonomous Workspace is truly, it allows you to really drive and enable your users. We use it internally. A couple of us as execs have been testing the platform. And I can honestly say, I was speaking to my boss the other day, Scott Dodds, our CEO. I can honestly say when you're looking at performance output on machines that are absolutely critical today, as you're constantly on video calls, you're constantly sharing your screens, we've seen around 200% increase in the performance levels based on hardware. We've always known hardware becomes that limitation to scale, and deploying Autonomous Workspace allowed us to absolutely get out there and drive it. And then if I talk about our relationship and partnership with the likes of Citrix, Microsoft, IA Connect also comes into mind. IA Connect is an automation platform that allows taking standard security protocols and deploying our RPA across those and making sure your users don't have access to areas that they shouldn't. So it's a real security play, and that has been driven by our partnerships with the likes of Blue Prism, UiPath, as vendors that are actually co-selling our technology platforms. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the future from Ultima as we continue to deliver those services and IP that we have the capabilities to build in-house through our newly sort of formed business unit called Ultima Labs. I don't want to talk too long on that area because, again, Mike will show key concepts of that. But I think that's me, Gillian. That's, I think I'm just on time, I hope. But I look forward to speaking to you a little later today around our adoption services and where we've taken it and how we've delivered that across our customer base and how we're continuing to scale that end-to-end customer services element, including of making sure you're best utilizing, following best practices, and really taking advantage of the full suites that the likes of Citrix and Microsoft have to offer.
Thank you so much, Gareth. That's really great. And, you know, it really brings to light the true value of the partnerships that have really been forged with, and is what today's theme about what the partnership with Citrix and Ultima and Microsoft can do. So with that, I'm going to transition to Nikki Aiken for our next session. So let me just go ahead and make Nikki the presenter. Nikki Aiken is the Microsoft Alliance and Partner Account Manager at Citrix. Nikki is responsible for driving the engagement for Citrix with Microsoft across the UKI, accelerating and building on the impact of the strategic partnership that brings both joint and new customers as they continue to transform their businesses and take advantage of the cloud technology. So it's really very fitting, Nikki, that you are here to join us and share the insights on the Microsoft and Citrix partnership. Thank you for joining.
Great. No, thank you, Gillian. And thank you for joining us this morning. So I'm going to take you through just one of the longest partnerships in the tech industry, really, and how we've enhanced our collaboration. So the 14th of July saw the most comprehensive and unique acceleration of our 30-year partnership with Microsoft. So both organisations have really been engaged for the last 8 to 9 months, agreeing and building on our already significant go-to-market. So this announcement really does place Citrix in an elite group of partners with Microsoft. And so with that comes commercial benefits, increased investment. And both Satya Nadella and David Henschel are co-sponsors of this. So really looking to both organisations and our partner community, such as Ultima, to really drive it forward over the next few years. And the companies join forces really to simplify that cloud transformation and speed of adoption of digital workspaces and virtual desktops to really enable greater agility, productivity, and security. So why have we done this? And I think really to provide a holistic approach for both our customer and our partner community. So we can focus on 3 things really. So elevation, simplification, and acceleration. So with elevation, you know, Citrix, as you all know, has long been known to enable remote and flexible access to business systems. And I think over the recent months with COVID, we've really been elevated to a more critical role with many of our enterprise customers. And with simplification, with our customers now being able to buy solutions from both Microsoft and Citrix in a single transaction, really accelerating that transformation to cloud. And I think more importantly, that time to value. So in the press, this has been shown as a COVID collaboration. So where the pandemic has really increased that demand for flexible infrastructure that can be accessed from anywhere and scaled at a moment's notice. And I think we all understand that that demand's not going to diminish as we move into the new normal, whenever that might be. And I think the one thing that I wanted to take from here is just that really powerful statement really from Satya, that together with Citrix, Azure will apply the power of Azure to this challenge and really help our customers seamlessly, and I think importantly, securely, connect their employees to applications so they're more agile and productive wherever they are. So I just wanted to take you through a high-level overview of what the partnership agreement contains. So it is a multi-year partnership agreement. It's a 3-year rolling contract, so it hasn't just been signed for 12 months. So really signifies the importance of the collaboration that we have with Microsoft. I think it's really reinforcing that preferred 30-year partnership that we've had, and as I've said, one of the longest in the industry. So Citrix has designated Azure as a strategic preferred cloud, and then in turn, Microsoft have reciprocated by designating Citrix Workspace as a preferred digital workspace solution to run on Azure. So this really is a first and hasn't been done before with any partner with Microsoft. And so why have we done that? I think, you as our customers really want the technology to work together. And I think we're ensuring as a joint team that we're having those conversations that our customers want to hear. And with our joint offerings, really enabling both Citrix and Microsoft to co-sell respectively and provide new routes to market, so via Azure Marketplace and also through our trusted partner community. And what does that mean for you as our customers? So we're also developing and providing tools for our partners, so really make it easier to move Citrix customers from on-prem desktop and virtualization platforms to Azure. So we're hoping here to really reduce that fear, anxiety and doubt that has potentially been in the marketplace around our relationship. And the connected product roadmap, so although our engineering teams have worked together over the last 30 years, really taking that collaboration to another level so we can innovate more quickly, faster, and I think importantly together. So really enabling that consistent and optimal work experience. And again, the joint offerings just comprising all the best of breed. So our Citrix Workspace, Citrix SD-WAN technologies, alongside Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365. So I think the global pandemic really has caused both employees and companies to really rethink where and how work gets done. So together, Citrix and Microsoft are really helping CIOs to minimize risk, cost and complexity and accelerating that transformation to the cloud. And I think really coming together in the new world of work. So combining the power of cloud with Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365 and Citrix Workspace, really providing that platform for flexible work by giving employees unified access to all of the applications, content and business services that they need to be productive and secure whenever and wherever they work. And what does this mean really? So the enhanced capabilities, Citrix Workspace is authorized by Microsoft to enhance and extend Windows Virtual Desktop with features that are not available in WVD native. So really allowing customers to leverage the multi-session Windows 10 capabilities. Combining Citrix Workspace with Azure, so really a great way to offer flexible, scalable and a secure digital workspace. And together, Citrix Cloud and Windows Virtual Desktop really do provide that powerful, complete, seamless way for customers to run all of their application workloads on Azure and access Windows-based applications across any device or platform. And Toby will go into this in more detail in his section, but I think really to remember that only Citrix technologies provide Windows Virtual Desktop with simple and flexible management tools. So just to pick out three important things from here, really. So our hybrid cloud management capabilities, our enhanced security, so with features like our app protection and watermarking, and the unparalleled user experience via our HCX technologies. So moving on to our integration with Microsoft Teams, and it really is a great example of how Citrix Workspace is evolving with Microsoft. I think by integrating Microsoft Teams with Citrix Workspace, really together, both solutions accelerate collaboration securely and seamlessly, which can drive productivity across a range of business activities. So I think we've seen with COVID, thousands of distributed devices. A traditional Microsoft Teams deployment can expose you to inconsistent configurations, security risks, and a really variable user experience. And I think important to remember here that only Citrix Workspace can really provide that unified, secure, and intelligent workspace employee experience that organizes, guides, and automates work. So let me talk you through some of our integrations with Microsoft Teams. So Citrix really is going the extra mile to ensure that our workspace intelligent feed is accessible in Microsoft Teams. So users can seamlessly send micro app notifications directly into a Teams chat channel. So groups of users can collaborate with colleagues on important workspace tasks, notifications and content updates. Another key integration point between Citrix Workspace and Teams is the integration with our Citrix Workspace Virtual Assistant. So coming soon, customers will be able to embed the Citrix Workspace Virtual Assistant capabilities directly into Microsoft Teams. And then moving on to SaaS applications. So really they are gaining momentum, but customers still do have on-prem applications that they need to integrate into their digital workspace strategy. So although Teams does some of that integration, the Citrix Workspace Micro App Builder can really extend that integration with those existing SaaS applications as well as your on-premise applications. And then lastly, where Citrix Workspace can also integrate across different identity providers to really centrally authenticate users for the intelligent feed integrations and ensure that actions are all performed securely with compliant data policies. So really just a few of the key benefits, just to showcase how Citrix is really extending the capability of Microsoft Teams and working collaboratively with our counterparts at Microsoft. So hopefully what I've taken you through today before I go on to pass over to Toby is really that new holistic approach that we have with Microsoft. So as I mentioned, really showcasing that hybrid capability, the enhanced security and the unparalleled user experience. So really together, enabling that agility, productivity and enhanced security in the new normal for our customers. And I think just to finish off, there's just a quote from David Henschel when the partnership, enhanced partnership was announced. So really together, Citrix and Microsoft delivering a powerful digital workspace in a trusted and secure public cloud with Azure, where employees can access everything they need to be productive, work securely, whether that be at home or in the office. So that's all from me, Gillian, if there's any questions.
No questions have come through yet, but just another reminder to please do ask questions and we'll make sure that we get those addressed. Thank you, Nikki. It was really great to kind of hear that overview, hear the innovations. And now, obviously, it's great that we'll be able to have Toby Brown go through and kind of talk through the actually how the Citrix and Azure integrated workspace can be delivered. So I will go ahead and change to you, Toby. There you go.
Okay.
Just while I do, I'll take the opportunity to introduce everyone to you, Toby. So Toby Brown is the domain specialist at Citrix. So he's aligned to the Microsoft Alliance team and spends most of his time delivering the Citrix plus Microsoft value add message to our customers and partners, as you will be doing today. So thank you for joining us.
No problem. I'm just going to, you can be my sanity check. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. So, yeah, Toby Brown, I'm a domain specialist at Citrix. As Gillian says, I talk to customers and partners about our value add on top of Microsoft solutions. So what does Citrix bring to Microsoft solutions? And for the last maybe 2.5 years, that's predominantly become why Citrix and what does Citrix add in terms of Azure. Why put your desktop workloads in Azure? And that has predominantly now become, with Microsoft have their Windows Virtual Desktop solution. So why would I still need Citrix when Microsoft are providing all that functionality? So that's what I talk to our customers and partners about now. I'm going to take Nikki's covered probably some of the recent partnership announcements, but what I'm going to do is take you back in time a little bit further to when Citrix were formed. So we have been, working with Microsoft for over 30 years, and I think we're formed in 1989. And we were formed by a group of ex-IBM engineers that basically they saw, they saw a gap in the market. They saw a requirement to take the then Microsoft operating systems of that time and make them more remote access friendly and basically kickstart that whole work from anywhere device, work from any device, any location, etc. mantra that Citrix have so become accustomed to. In fact, we took that technology to be built and it was actually licensed back to Microsoft and is still in the product today. So even ignoring the recent partnership announcements, we have probably the longest standing partnership in the industry, and that's obviously resulted in a lot of joint customers around the world and a lot of users using millions of users using our technology in tandem, because quite categorically Citrix really don't exist unless it's it is to add value to Microsoft operating systems. Some of the recent announcements, even before the partnership announcement back in 2015, we made a strategic decision as an organization to host our capabilities and to deliver our Citrix as a service offerings from Azure. So rather than AWS or Google Cloud, we made a decision to host and deliver all our services for our end users from Azure. And in turn, that became a kind of by proxy, we recommended Azure as a strategic platform for our customers. And again, as Nikki took you through in the announcement recently, we actually made that official as well. Shortly after we made the announcement in 2015 about Azure, we launched our first service. So in 2016, we launched our first service, which was the Virtual Apps and Desktop service, hosted in Azure and delivered. So that's now 4 years old now, which is a long time in cloud terms, and it's a very robust and mature offering that takes everything we knew about on-premises application delivery and moved it into the cloud. And you'll also see things like Azure AD as the preferred identity platform for Citrix Cloud Solutions. So if you are looking to adopt, you know, an identity provider like Azure AD, then you will see that it's a first-class citizen in all of our offerings. And probably, you know, people ask me why Azure and why not AWS. What were the main reasons? And this slide's already out of date because it says 50+, and I know that's now over 60, so I'll have to get that updated. But just due to that scale and the way that Microsoft, you know, are opening regions and data centers all over the world, they are more regions combined than AWS and Google combined. So they have the scale and the presence across the globe, and they also have the second largest network in terms of copper and fiber laid down, only behind AT&T in the world. So they give Citrix the scale and breadth that is required, because if you think about our fundamental purpose is to deliver applications and desktop and services to end users, we want to be able to do that and deliver that from as close as possible to those users wherever they are in the globe. So having the scale and breadth that Microsoft give us with Azure is probably the #1 reason we chose them for our public cloud provider of choice. So let's talk a little bit about Windows Virtual Desktop. So essentially, you know, if you think about Microsoft and what they did for many years, is they talked about this, their capability for adopting the modern workplace was all based around Surface devices and, you know, Office 365, etc., and adopting those technologies. But I think they finally saw, you know, that VDI or traditional VDI or desktop delivery was actually something that customers were, you know, adopting it at pace for security reasons, for governance reasons, for, you know, sweating the asset, etc. So I think they probably would admit they're a little bit late to the party in terms of VDI, but what they've done is they've come at it with a compelling offering, and that is the Windows Virtual Desktop or WVD. And something that I always have to talk to my customers about is the fact that Windows Virtual Desktop is not something that Microsoft can actually sell to you as a customer. It's not something you can sell like 10 SKUs or give me 10 users on Windows Virtual Desktop as such. It is an entitlement that you may already have because it comes with Microsoft 365. So with their E3 and E5 packages and a couple of other small variations, if you have those solutions, then you are entitled to run Windows Virtual Desktop. And the easiest way to explain that entitlement is, for years it was very complex to unlock and license desktop operating systems. So if you wanted to do VDI in the cloud, it was very difficult because Microsoft had a whole bunch of licensing hoops that you had to go through, SKUs that you had to purchase, CALs that you had to purchase and have, instances or dedicated hardware instances in public cloud platforms. They got rid of that. So as part of this entitlement, they just unlocked and made it really easy to deploy the operating systems that you see in front of you in their cloud platform without having to worry about all the licensing hoops. And in terms of delivery of desktops, or the key sort of the key desktop delivery mechanism that Microsoft deployed, there's two big ones. Windows 7 extended security. So if you are a customer with Windows 7 VDI, you've already probably, if you're still on that platform, you're either having to pay Microsoft extended security support contract, or you're running unsupported. Now, with Windows Virtual Desktop, Microsoft gives you that capability to run that workload in their Azure cloud and get extended security support for free for the next 3 years as well. So it's a compelling reason for customers that haven't quite managed to get off of the Windows 7 platform. And the other big thing to take note of is Microsoft actually built a new version of Windows 10. So Windows 10 multi-session, as it's kind of shortened to, it's got a big longer name as you would expect from a Microsoft solution. But essentially that is a Windows 10 version that gives you the scalability that you may be used to with deploying a Windows Server operating system and having multiple users on at the same time, but you get the front end compatibility that you would get with consumer Windows 10, with Windows 10 that you use in the house. So we don't have to worry about application compatibility, but we don't have to trade that off by giving up on scalability as well. So this is the real carrot that Microsoft dangle in front of customers to say, if you would like this, then you have to use Windows 10. You have to adopt Windows Virtual Desktop, because Windows 10 multi-session is only available and delivered from Azure. So how does Citrix help? If Windows Virtual Desktop sounds very much like a desktop in Azure, why would I need Citrix? So what can Citrix do to help? Well, the way I explain to my customers is WVD, the sort of three most overused letters probably in the industry at the moment. It stands for Windows Virtual Desktop, as we've just gone through, but put simply, WVD is a virtual desktop that runs in Azure. So the infrastructure for that virtual desktop is provided by Azure. So if you really want to boil it down, and Microsoft don't like it when we do this, but Windows Virtual Desktop is just VDI. It's just VDI that runs in Azure. And guess who's good at delivering VDI? Well, Citrix have been delivering applications and desktops for over 30 years, again, since we were formed. And for the last 12, we were at the forefront of that new wave of people wanting to, or organizations looking to deliver a one-to-one relationship with one desktop, one user, which became the VDI acronym. And we've been there at the forefront of delivering that, as you can see from our press release from 2008. So we really are the experts in delivery of VDI. It's what we live, it's what we breathe. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why Satya picked up the phone to David and said, can you help us out with Windows Virtual Desktop delivery? Because we're seeing traction, but you guys are the experts in this. So what can you do to help us really push Windows Virtual Desktop? And what Microsoft have done is they have authorized Citrix to be able to deliver Windows Virtual Desktop. And we do that in a number of different ways, but the key ones that are listed on the screen at the moment, and I'm going to talk about two of them in a bit more depth. We have Citrix Workspace on the furthest right, which is our premium all-you-can-eat offering, which includes our endpoint management, our file sync and share solution. We have the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service in the middle, which is part of Citrix Workspace, but it's probably what you know. It's Zen App and Zen Desktop delivered as a service from Azure. And maybe the one on the left you're not so familiar with, but the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop standard for Azure. And I go at Microsoft for creating long names, but we've just done it as well. This is the new name for Citrix Managed Desktops, which was an offering we created, a turnkey offering that we created, which I'm going to go into in a bit more depth in a second. The key thing to understand about all our offerings is they can only be, Windows Virtual Desktop can only be consumed by our offerings that run, our as a service offerings that run in Citrix Cloud, which runs in Azure. So if you're a customer with an on-premises control plane, on-premises deployment, classic Citrix, you will not be able to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. And that's not a technical reason, that is a licensing limitation that Microsoft and Citrix have agreed that to accelerate adoption of Windows Virtual Desktop, it really has to be delivered from a cloud service, because that gives us the scale, the reach, and the continual updates, etc. And for those who don't know what Citrix Cloud is, well, Citrix Cloud is about reducing complexity. This is a traditional on-premises Citrix deployment. There's a lot of components, there's a lot of parts that can go wrong, the SQL database, the delivery controllers, storefront servers. These are all components that a customer has to build to be able to support their application and desktop delivery strategy. With Citrix Cloud, or the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service, we take all the complexity away. So we take everything that can potentially go wrong, so the SQL database, the delivery controllers, the storefront servers, And if we want, we can take there's secure remote access component part as well. So what you then see at the bottom is a very simplified infrastructure. There's less for you to worry about and to manage and maintain. You just maintain the bits that are important to you, so the application servers, the desktop servers, everything else that's similar across the components that all customers have to deploy is delivered as us by a service, very much similar to Office 365. You know, you don't worry about mailboxes and delivery group sizing, etc. You just allow Microsoft to build that and provide it as a service. And it's the same with Citrix Cloud. We want you to consume the service from us, which allows you to adopt Windows Virtual Desktop, but adopt it where it's appropriate. You don't have to adopt it for all use cases, because you can quite simply deploy Windows Virtual Desktop to the users who need it, alongside maybe traditional VDI to people in your organization who still need that, or you want to sweat that investment that you have in that on-prem infrastructure. You can do that. You can do that with Citrix Cloud. But ultimately, you know, the end goal for both Citrix and Microsoft is to get to this kind of state. If we can get to a state where Citrix is delivered as a service, where Windows 10 is delivered as a service, where the infrastructure providing it from Azure is evergreen, we have got an evergreen configuration here, because all the components that need updating are being provided to you as a service from Citrix and from Microsoft, which means as an organization, you spend less time worrying about desktop refresh cycles, etc., and focus on projects that are of more value to you. And again, if we can do this and get to this point where your desktops are in Azure, Citrix Cloud's in Azure, Microsoft spend $1 billion a year in security in Azure. You know, they protect that infrastructure. They wrap this sort of secure digital perimeter around this environment here, and can protect it in ways that just customers don't have the budget to protect it as well. So we can get to a real kind of zero trust kind of architecture here in terms of desktop delivery. So let me talk a little bit about the first offering that I spoke about. There's a Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Standard for Azure, or it was called Citrix Managed Desktops, or Citrix Desktop as a Service, as it was originally going to be called. And that's what it is. It's a simple solution that you can use for spinning up desktops that run in Windows Virtual Desktop that have a Citrix front end to them, but without needing the Citrix skills. You don't need to have a Citrix administrator on hand to be able to configure this, because all you need to do is enter a couple of keywords. What's the name of your use case? And we will deploy all the infrastructure required to support that. Spin up the workspace URL, you hand that to your customers, you tell them to log in with their Azure AD credentials, and off they go. It's a great solution. It's aimed at some of the obvious use cases. COVID obviously has accelerated adoption of the solution, but it's a pay-as-you-go offering as well. It's slightly different to what we do in terms of traditional Citrix delivery. So if you've got short-term seasonal capacity that you want, you know, desktops for, and you want to spin them up and take them back down, you can use your Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement and Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Standard for Azure, or Citrix Managed Desktops, as I think I'll just keep calling it, to give you that seasonal capacity. Could be for business continuity, could be for offshore developers. Mergers and acquisitions is obviously another big one as well. But what I'm here to talk to you today predominantly about is the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service, or Zen App and Zen Desktop, that's now delivered as a service. And this is a slide I borrowed from Microsoft with their permission, but this shows you what a native Windows Virtual Desktop solution looks like. And there's three key components to it. At the bottom, we have the compute, the storage, the networking that Microsoft provide. That is what, you know, candidly, a Microsoft salesperson is compensated if they can sell a lot of the stuff at the bottom. So when that happens, when you consume your desktops are running, that's when Microsoft are happy. That's what they want. They want those workloads in Azure. So that's the infrastructure as a service at the bottom. In green, the customer has to bring their subscription. You as a customer, you have to bring your Microsoft 365 entitlement, which allows you to deploy those operating systems. And then at the top is the bit that causes the confusion with Citrix. So to provide and to be able to consume Windows Virtual Desktop natively, Microsoft built a control plane. They actually closely modeled it on XenApp and Zen Desktop, but obviously it doesn't have the functionality. So when we talk about how we support Windows Virtual Desktop, nothing at the bottom changes. So you still have to provide, Microsoft still have to provide the compute. They still see the consumed revenue when customers spend there. The subscription and the licensing stays the same, but Citrix just disregard the Microsoft control plane, and we bring in swap in ours, and that's where the rich heritage that I spoke about, that 30-year heritage, all our engineering effort comes in. When we deliver the control plane, you get all the associated benefits of Citrix.
Toby, just there, can I ask a question? There was a question in the panel that was, do you need to put a firewall device or buy different licensing in front of a Citrix WVD implementation to protect against malware or ransomware or other such threats?
That would very much depend on your corporate policy. I mean, I would suggest if your corporate policy says that all traffic has to go through a firewall, that you continue doing that. We don't change any of that. We do provide, you know, the actual architecture that we deploy isn't that different to what you would on premises. Obviously, we manage some of the components for you, but the external access or even the internal access into the desktops is still going through a gateway, which you may provide, or it may go through our gateway service. So we can front end some of that, but ultimately the endpoints are still going to be running in Azure. You know, it's still going to be either in our gateway service or using your gateway. So I would say whatever your corporate standard is there, you would continue to do that. If you offload some of that responsibility to us by using our gateway service, then that does become our responsibility. And we have a trust center, so our secure remote access is covered under our trust center, which covers all the mechanisms we use to protect it. But ultimately, we host our services in Azure, so we are protected by a lot of the security mechanisms that Microsoft use in terms of analytics and things like that. But I would say if you're an architect for your organization, I would say review our documentation, make a considered opinion there, but there's no reason that you would have to change it unless you wanted to adopt some of the gateway services that we offer.
Thanks, Toby.
Right. So if we're talking about the value add that we bring, so Toby, you've just showed me the control plane. Yes, I get it. So what are the key value adds that you bring to Windows Virtual Desktop Native? And if you've ever seen a Citrix presentation before, they normally fall under these three pillars: experience, security, and choice. So again, I'll cover the value add under those. So why are customers, in terms of experience, why do customers continue to come to Citrix? And I'll be honest, it's probably the same long-standing reasons that Citrix customers continue to use Citrix for Windows Virtual Desktop that they did for things like RDS. Why did a customer not deploy native RDS? Well, the performance wasn't great when I wasn't on a local area network, or I had struggled with peripheral support. I struggled with high definition delivery of high graphical applications, or you know, my optimization of my unified comms like Zoom, Teams, Skype for Business wasn't great, or I didn't have the management capabilities, etc. These are still the same reasons that customers choose Citrix to deliver Windows Virtual Desktop that they did over traditional RDS, because we, you know, that 30 years head start, maybe I'll say, that we have on Microsoft is where all our engineering effort has gone. So we have this any device, any network, any application mantra. We will auto adapt, you know, what we are presenting to an end user depending on their bandwidth. So depending on their bandwidth, latency, packet loss, etc. We will adjust our performance to make sure that we give that end user the best possible experience that they can get out of the network they are on. Probably more important than ever, we've all suddenly gone working from home. We're using broadband connections that may not have the best reliability. rather than corporate internet pipes. So we may find that, you know, performance isn't great when we go and working from home. I've heard horror stories about people trying to link corporate VPNs to, you know, their home iPads and things like that. So Citrix is great as just as a, you know, as a layer and as a zero trust layer that sits over the top of it, that will do its damnedest to make sure that the end user experience for those applications desktop delivery is as good as possible. And that is probably the #1 reason why customers continue to talk to Citrix about the delivery of Windows Virtual Desktop as well. Small example of that, just of the innovation, I like to throw in the odd example. People maybe were in the office, had 2 or 3 monitors. They go home now and they're trying to plug into their TV. We can help them replicate that workflow, because again, the innovation we drive into the product has allowed us to split a large monitor. I mean, I'm on a large 4K monitor at the moment, but I can split it when I'm accessing Citrix so that I can replicate my workflow by having a logical monitor layout that matches my physical layout, maybe, you know, 2 horizontal, 1 vertical, etc. I can replicate that workflow in Citrix and have that go full screen, etc. in that siphoned off area of it. So just a small example of some of the little bits of innovation we keep driving into our protocol that are becoming key for, you know, an ever increasing remote workforce. And talking about remote workforces, security has become key. Again, I spoke about horror stories I've heard about organizations trying to bundle PCs into the car to go home and work from home, or corporate VPNs collapsing, or being opened up to malware by having to open up to home PCs, all these things, you know. So WVD is great, and we have a great security story that we can add on top of it. You know, if we can't manage the endpoint, if we can't enroll the endpoint because it's a user's device, it's their iPad or it's their home PC, then what can we do to protect when we're using things like Windows Virtual Desktop? Well, Citrix have an advanced set of security tools that can block keyloggers. So if there's a keylogger running on the device, if the device is riddled with malware, then we can actually block sensitive information leaking from the keyboard stack by our anti-keylogger mechanisms as well. And in the same way, we can block screen capture. So if there's a malicious tool that's trying to capture the screen, like GoToMeeting actually, or GoToWebinar, ironically, if you demo over GoToWebinar, you don't see anything because it's treated as a screen capture utility and appears black. So we can wrap these kind of secure mechanisms around these endpoints that we don't necessarily trust to make sure we don't have any exfiltration of company data. And on the same lines, we have a couple of other capabilities as well. So we can add a watermark. So I don't know whether I'm never too sure whether this appears, but I have a very subtle watermark on the left-hand side in my Workspace app, showing my name, showing my IP address, and that's the same. We can protect these applications from somebody taking a camera phone out and taking a picture of the screen, by putting something that identifies them in that screenshot as well if they try to share it. We have the capability to record sessions as well. So if you've got contractors using Windows Virtual Desktop, or you've got training that you're running inside Windows Virtual Desktop, and you need to see a playback of everything that happened in that session, we can selectively choose to record those sessions so that you can play them back later on. And that may be training, it may be regulatory requirement, or just some sort of internal governance as well. So again, just protecting Windows Virtual Desktop from bad actors as such. And again, if we focus on, you know, you probably got this from me earlier on, but you know, Windows Virtual Desktop runs in Azure. It only runs in Azure. So if you are a customer that has a large on-premises VDI implementation of Citrix, and you want to adopt Windows Virtual Desktop, but you want to adopt it at your pace, you want to use it maybe for that use case I spoke about earlier on, third-party, contractor, offshore, etc. You don't want to adopt it holistically as your VDI solution, but you want one single place for your users to log on, then you can do that with Citrix. You can't do it natively with Windows Virtual Desktop. So you could have users logging in one day, they get a desktop that's coming from an on-prem Nutanix infrastructure, or it could even be a Linux desktop running in AWS. And the next day you can just change that desktop and give them a Windows Virtual Desktop instance just for the change of an Active Directory group membership. The hybrid story, the multi-cloud story, is a very big value add for Citrix, and it's one that Microsoft talk about a lot to their customers. And Teams as well. Now, we used to have a unique value add for Windows Virtual Desktop that said we could optimize Teams. Microsoft have that optimization now, but it's limited in the fact that it only supports Windows 10 multi-session as the endpoint, and it only supports Windows 10 as the client. So if you've got a thin client or you've got Mac OS X, you can't use Microsoft's solution to optimize Teams and to get that Teams offload that we do so well. So if you want a single solution that works across all your environment, you will need Citrix to deliver that Teams optimization across all those endpoints and all the great stuff that Nikki spoke about earlier on with our workspace integration as well. So this is probably one of the biggest ones as well, because not every customer is ready to throw everything into the cloud and adopt Windows Virtual Desktop holistically. You know, they've got technical debt, they've got a data center that they need, that they can't quite get out of yet and aren't going to get out of for the next foreseeable few years as well. So how can they get those applications and desktops delivered into Windows Virtual Desktop? And that's where we are key in doing that in a seamless manner, all with single sign-on as well. And we have a great set of help desk tools as well. So if you want a native Windows Virtual Desktop, doesn't include any great tools for troubleshooting. There's some simplistic tools, shadowing tools, etc. But we have a great solution in Citrix Director that can be used to pinpoint failures, probe Windows Virtual Desktop to see whether the desktops are available or not, so you don't give users a bad experience, but also chart things like, are you getting a lot of connection failures? You know, how's your load looking on that environment? Is CPU load increasing, for some reason that we're not aware of? How is logon performance? You know, Windows Virtual Desktop can be stood up, but maybe you've applied a new group policy that has ground logon to halt. We can give you the tools and the processes to go in and look at that, even network utilization, understanding what's happening on the network. Is the delay in logon coming from the client side or the server side, etc. So again, a rich set of management tools and a rich set of provisioning tools as well. So again, Windows Virtual Desktop has a very rudimentary capability for deploying desktops and updating desktops. If you want to do single image management, have a golden image and have that rolled out across Windows Virtual Desktop and across on-premises, we can do that with Citrix provisioning technologies, be that machine creation services or be that PVS. We have a rich set for whatever the use case. And one of the another theme that you'll see is we can help reduce I/O. So we've got some tools inside MCS that can actually help reduce the I/O requests that go to disks. If we can do that in Azure, we can save costs. So again, we've got a thread running through this that actually means we can probably help reduce costs as well. Next slide. Running any workload in the public cloud is going to incur costs. So you want to be able to schedule when that workload is up and running. And again, the Microsoft solution at the moment is very script based. It's not exactly intuitive. It's not built into the GUI. It uses Azure runbooks and things like that. We have it built into the GUI that you can power off and power on machines and have capacity available as and when required, so that desktops are available just in time, not just in case they're required, etc. And we can actually report on the cost saving. What have you saved by having those desktops shut down and powered down when not required? And again, in terms of cost savings as well, again, running the public cloud, if you can do anything to reduce the amount of resources being consumed by your desktops, then you can save money, or you can make the solution more scalable. You can get more users into the same space, which results in a lower cost as well. So we can wrap this set of guardrails around Windows Virtual Desktop to make sure that costs don't spiral out of control. We do that through our environment management software, our resource management software, and our user environment management software as well. So these can help keep your costs under control. And the UAM components specifically can be used to accelerate logons. So get faster logons to Windows Virtual Desktop. And if you can get faster logons, then your user experience will be better and your users will have an altogether better experience of adopting Windows Virtual Desktop. Just watching my time here. but I think this is the last couple of slides anyway. So summary, why the need for Citrix when delivering Windows Virtual Desktop? The best possible experience, so an unparalleled user experience. Basically, this is our 30-year heritage. Everything we've done over 30 years has been about guaranteeing the best possible experience and delivery of apps and desktops from a data center. If that data center happens to be Azure, then no difference to us. It's still the same tools and processes we would use to guarantee that best possible experience. And again, in the new world we're living in, you know, technologies, or we're trying to adopt technologies like use your own device or bring your own device, etc., where you perhaps can't enroll that endpoint, then Citrix have the tools to protect Windows Virtual Desktop from everything that might be underlying on the consumer device that's being used to access a corporate resource. And again, probably the biggest one that Microsoft internally will talk to customers about is choice. So if they have a multi-cloud strategy, if they are heavily invested in hybrid cloud and putting resources wherever is the most appropriate, then you will need Citrix to be able to deliver that hybrid multi-cloud strategy. And we can help make sure that Windows Virtual Desktop lands with customers as well. That is we can help with adoption through our tooling and processes, and we can help make sure that cost control is kept, costs are kept under control as well, which results in hopefully customers adopting it and then not getting scared off by some of the public cloud costs that they later see as well. So I think this might be my final slide, and I think I'm bang on time as well. So if you want to know more about our offering, then that's the key URL, more.citrix.com/Windows Virtual Desktop. And just to show some of the, as part of the new partnership, we have a lot of great collateral that's coming out jointly with Microsoft. Proof of concept guides, if you want to go away and do this and spin up quickly. Record is 45 minutes, by the way, from start to finish, from nothing to Citrix Cloud and desktops in Azure. Then we have a guide for doing that there. If you are looking at how can I take my on-prem workloads, what are the steps I need to go to get those into Azure and to get my Citrix deployment into Citrix Cloud, we have a guide. And we have a great tool that actually do a lot of that configuration for you as well. And these are all part of the joint tools and processes that Nikki spoke about with our new integrated product roadmap with Microsoft as well. Oh my God, I don't think I've ever finished so close to being on time. I think it was 10 past, wasn't it, Gillian? So.
Yeah, exactly 10 past. To be fair, Nikki and Gareth gave you a bit of breathing space.
I thought they might, hence why I didn't speak through my traditional Glaswegian manner that I normally do. So.
Well, thank you so much. That was really great. And we're now going to just transition into a bit of a break, give everyone a chance to kind of come back refreshed after the 10 minutes. Let me just go ahead and put that up. But we've got a 10-minute break now. And when we're back from the break, we'll hear a bit more from the Ultima team about the Citrix Cloud Success Program and the workspace innovations. So there's plenty more to talk through after the break, but we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Don't go away, is what she's saying.
Exactly.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hi there, Andy.
Hi, Gillian. Did you want to make me a presenter and I'll get my slides good to go?
Do that now. Oh,
Bear with me.
there we go. Fantastic.
Okay, can you see that okay?
We can, yes. So Andy, thank you so much for joining and leading this session. Just to let everyone know, Andy McCulloch is a solutions architect in the Modern Workspace team at Ultima, specializing in Citrix solutions, but really responsible for anything involving delivering services to users. So you obviously 15 years of designing and deploying Citrix solutions, 12 years at Ultima. You go without introduction that you are an expert in this. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Brilliant. Thanks for the intro, Gillian. So hopefully everyone's back and ready for soaking up a little bit more information. So what we're going to talk about today, what I'm going to be talking about today a little bit is just some high-level stuff around kind of how we approach moves to cloud services, and also just to touch on some of the recent licensing changes that Citrix have introduced, kind of moving from perpetuals to subscription and kind of how that can potentially affect you and kind of some reasons why it can actually be quite a good thing. So we'll just kick off with a bit of an open question. So what does cloud actually mean to you? Because I think kind of Toby mentioned WVD was probably one of the most overused acronyms in the industry at the moment. So cloud also has become a very general purpose term for quite a lot of things. So it could be software as a service, platform as a service, desktop as a service, is a web app a cloud? You might even have your own cloud. So cloud can actually mean quite a lot of different things for a lot of people. So what does cloud mean to me? I think an interesting quote from an old VMware CEO is that cloud isn't actually a place that you run things, it's a way that you do things. And that's kind of a really interesting approach to how you can view cloud technologies. So a few of the kind of aspects that jump out to me is that cloud is quite an opportunity for a lot of organizations to get out of the data center business. There's very few organizations that started with a hope that one day they're going to own a lot of servers and switching infrastructure and racks and cabling. It's not really a direct benefit to the business kind of having a mini data center or kind of having a lot of infrastructure to be able to do what the business wants to do. So cloud can also be an opportunity to shift the technology focus over to kind of delivering business value and value to users. So really focusing on what is it that the business needs to be able to kind of drive productivity, drive growth, and what the users need to be able to drive productivity. It also means taking an approach of consuming more and owning less. So looking at kind of things that you can have as a service. So rather than kind of having to deliver the entire stack to provide a particular piece of functionality for a user, being able to just consume that and gain the benefits from that service without necessarily introducing additional overhead. It can also mean introducing new operational efficiencies. So by the virtue of owning less, it means you can potentially refocus some of your energies on kind of higher value tasks. So being able to become more productive and deliver more as an IT organization. And also flexibility. So kind of a lot of people get stuck in their ways, I think, especially in terms of delivering services into the organization. Most organizations are really bad at getting rid of old stuff, but they're really good at adding more and more and more. So the estate always grows. So having flexibility to be able to pivot the services that you're delivering or adjust differing business demands is kind of a real critical part of kind of what IT organizations need to do today. And cloud services can really help give you a jump start in getting there. So as you've all got Just Eat vouchers, I thought I'd try and make you a little bit hungry by kind of looking at the different ways that we can deliver services as kind of how we'd approach how we consume pizza. So if you look at a traditional on-prem environment, that's the equivalent of making your own pizza at home. So in that scenario, you bring in the cheese, the toppings, you're making your own dough, you've got to have an oven there ready to fire it up, you've got to bring your own drinks, and you've got to have somewhere to eat it. So you're basically responsible for every individual component of being able to get that pizza. So if we look at a take and bake option, that's our equivalent of infrastructure as a service. So in this scenario, we don't have to worry about the ingredients. We've still got to go to a shop, buy it, we've got to cook it, and then we've got to have somewhere to eat and a drink to go with it. So we're kind of like a little bit less responsible, but we've still got a lot of ownership of that process. So having a pizza delivered, so your classic Domino's scenario, in that situation, the pizza arrives at your door and you've only got to worry about having somewhere to eat it and something to drink with it. And then you've got the software as a service, so basically a complete consumption model where effectively you go out, you dine out, you kind of have your pizza, you don't have to worry about anything, you're paying for the thing that you went there to get. So applying that same model to Citrix Workspace or the virtual apps and desktop service as a model, if we look at the traditional on-prem environment, this is where you own the whole stack. So you're responsible for the compute infrastructure that you're running it on. You're responsible for delivering the management layer, high availability of those components, the access layer, access to that solution, kind of be it on-prem or remote, and also the operating system and the VDA and applications, so the actual services that people are going to consume. You've then got your infrastructure as a service model, which is your kind of host or hybrid type model. So this is kind of where we look at kind of cloud providers to be able to provide us that underlying compute infrastructure. So the storage, the networking, the servers, the resiliency options. But we still have responsibility for providing that management layer, for supporting that management layer, for providing the access layer, for providing remote access, and we've still got responsibility for the OS and applications. Now, in a platform as a service model, so this is where we start looking at the Citrix cloud offerings. So this is where potentially you're looking at it in a cloud provider. You've got the hardware stack provided for you. You've got the networking stack provided for you. You've also got the management layer provided for you at this point. So this is what Toby was talking about with the Citrix Cloud Control Plane. So in that model, the only things you're really responsible for are the operating system and the applications. And then we've got a software as a service type model. So this is where we look at things like our autonomous workspace offering that Michael's going to be talking about a little bit later on, or just a standard managed service. So this is where you'd work with a trusted partner to basically deliver the entire stack on your behalf. So you can have a complete consumption model for that particular offering. But one of the important things is that if you look at the value chain in any of these offerings, then where you're gaining direct value from the solution is really in those top two layers. So the question is, how much of that stack do you want to have ownership of? How much of that stack do you want to be responsible for delivering? And if you look at it from a business value perspective, then really the majority of the value that you're going to be gaining is from actually those top two layers. So focusing on scenarios where you can put your efforts and your investment into those aspects of the solution is going to give you a far better outcome for the organization. So Toby's given us a great overview of kind of what the Citrix Cloud model is, but again, this is really a case of owning less and delivering more, so focusing on the services that you need to provide to the organization and to the users to give them the best possible experience. And Citrix Cloud is one of the fantastic ways that you're able to do that by owning less of the infrastructure required to actually deliver that service to your users. So we're going to touch on public cloud. So obviously this is kind of a Microsoft focused event, but obviously there are some other cloud providers that you may be aware of. We won't dwell on those too much. So where public cloud has really been important, I think it's kind of really come to the forefront in the last 6 months. I think at the point when people realized that potentially they needed to have significant growth in their infrastructure to be able to support new ways of working, that places some very real demands on organizations. So there's some customers that we're aware of that potentially they've had to scale 2, 3, 4x, and doing that in entirely on-prem infrastructure, either you've had incredible foresight and been able to predict the situation that a lot of people are being put in, or you've potentially had to significantly over provision your internal infrastructure to have that level of flexibility. And a lot of people got quite caught out in a position where they found they needed to have significant increase in capacity at a time when globally there was a massive demand on the hardware market. So actually buying in additional physical servers at that point then becomes really challenging. So this is where a lot of people started to look into public cloud as a potential outlet for being able to gain that additional capacity at short notice. And a lot of organizations were put in a position where they had to undergo significant digital transformation, to coin a phrase, in a matter of weeks, as opposed to the months to years that a lot of organizations would typically be useful. And some of those customers would have already started their cloud journey. So for customers where they maybe already had some services that they were running in public cloud, it may have just simply been a case of extending their deployments in those areas, or kind of adding some additional resources to be able to accommodate the additional load. But there's a lot of people where they really had to start from scratch. So depending on where you are on your cloud journey, it's really important to understand that it's kind of important to have a clear understanding of exactly what your objective is in terms of how you're going to adopt public cloud as a resource, and make sure that you're really driving towards the objectives that you want to achieve through using public cloud services. Even choosing where you're going to run your resources can be challenging. So obviously, Azure is a kind of first-class citizen in a lot of organizations, but I think some particular challenges that some organizations have had, so kind of around the inception of the work from home epidemic, kind of around March, some organizations found, especially if they were new to public cloud, that there may have been some capacity issues in terms of being able to scale up their resources as they wanted to in Azure. This kind of resulted in a situation where people either had to scale back their expectations out of in terms of what resources they were going to be able to deploy, or alternatively, they'd potentially need to look at alternative public clouds. So obviously there are a number of large public cloud providers that are out there that all provide the fundamental compute resources that a lot of organizations need. So it's really important to understand that there are more than one, there's more than one option. So making sure that you have an architecture that supports the ability to consume resources from the most appropriate place at any one point is really important, because a lot of people kind of pin themselves to one provider. And if you find a situation where you do potentially need to consume resources from another place, it's important that you have that ability to be able to pivot and adapt your infrastructure to be able to run it in the place that's going to be most appropriate at that point in time. So, and again, if we look at failure domains, so if we could potentially consider a single public cloud provider as an individual failure domain. So Azure are excellent in terms of resiliency and availability, and customers have fantastic results for running workloads in there. But then there are some global services that can potentially be impacted by outages. So there is the potential that your public cloud provider could become a failure domain. And in that situation, you really need to start looking at, well, if you have real high availability critical services that you want to run in public cloud, then Toby touched on it earlier, that multi-cloud is actually something that a lot of organizations are looking at in terms of being able to ensure absolute resiliency for any cloud-based services they're delivering into their organization. So having an architecture that's going to support the ability to, maybe not necessarily in the short term, but in the kind of medium to long term, pivot to potentially other providers is a really important thing to understand. So making sure that your architecture is able to support the potential multi-cloud architecture that you may find that you require is something that really needs to be considered up front to make sure that you're making the right choice at the start of your journey. Some other things to consider in terms of multi-clouds as well is these are large cloud providers and the market is fairly competitive. So even from a commercial perspective, it can be a consideration. So if you're paying a particular per hour cost for a workload in one cloud provider, if all of a sudden one of the other cloud providers is able to provide that same workload at a lower cost, then it could be a commercial consideration as to whether or not it's going to be appropriate to run your workloads potentially somewhere else. And it's not necessarily something that we're seeing kind of widespread today. We see a lot of customers at the start of that journey, but I think where everyone's going to end up is potentially in a position where they're able to choose at the point when they want to stand up a workload, where's going to be the most cost-effective place for me to run this today. And having an infrastructure that's able to support that is going to give you some potentially significant benefits going forwards. So how not to do public cloud? I touched on it earlier in terms of cloud is a way that you do things. So one of the things to be conscious of is that doing public cloud successfully isn't going to be a case of replicating your existing processes in another set of infrastructure. It's a real opportunity to understand how you can optimize your processes, optimize your operational approach to delivering services, and really to make sure that you're focused on value, because again, when there's costs for running things, I think it really focuses a lot of people's considerations in terms of what value they're getting from things. So again, this is where it starts to make a lot of difference in terms of when there's a cost for me to run a full stack for a particular service, it then starts making consuming that kind of far more attractive. So making sure that you're really focusing on the things that can deliver you the most value is going to pay the most dividends in a public cloud environment. So by far, one of the most common approaches to cloud that we see at the moment is hybrid. So there's very few organizations that are currently fully cloud. I think there are some that may have ambitions to go in that direction, apart from kind of potentially very new organizations where they don't own any infrastructure. There's very few established organizations that are kind of fully cloud at the moment. So I just wanted to walk through a few scenarios that we're seeing quite commonly in terms of people either dipping their toes in the water to kind of run some kind of tactical things in the cloud, or how they can potentially add to their existing capabilities through consuming cloud services. So by far the most popular one that we've seen in the last few years is using public cloud for DR or business continuity. So the economics of cloud is obviously, depending on the way that you purchase, you have the option of having a pay-as-you-go approach. So if you look at DR type hosting environment, then if you're not running any workloads, then there's kind of very minimal costs in terms of utilizing public cloud for DR. So obviously, if those workloads aren't in use, then through the benefits of using kind of auto scale in Citrix Cloud, we've got the ability to have a kind of very minimal set of infrastructure, but with the ability to rapidly scale. So that's kind of where we've seen a lot of traction with many customers in the last few years. Extending workloads is another very common use case that we see. So this may be a scenario where Toby touched on it earlier, where potentially there may be some kind of contractor use cases where you've got perhaps a kind of discrete set of resources that you need to provide for a particular purpose. So this may be a particular project-based team who need a particular set of resources. So being able to extend your environment into public cloud gives you the ability to kind of extend the offerings without necessarily having to invest in the on-premises infrastructure to support that. And this is kind of the model that we've seen in the last 6 months, where people have had to rapidly scale their remote access solutions to be able to meet the massive growth in remote working for their organizations. So we've also got burst. So this is the position that some customers found themselves in, where they already had systems in place to be able to burst their on-premises environments into a cloud provider. So this is, again, a kind of variance of the extend model, where perhaps you have a very short-term need to extend your workloads, but then you also have the ability to scale those down quite quickly. So again, it's really important to kind of understand that in that type of model, you're only paying for what you use. So if you have a very short-term requirement, then you can accommodate that workload, but you obviously only pay for the usage that you incur through supporting that. So data locality is another interesting one. So obviously one of the things with the current situation is that it has a global impact. So there's some organizations where perhaps there may be regulatory restrictions in terms of where they're actually able to access data from. So perhaps where there may be some overseas workers, it may be approved for them to be able to access data directly when they're in a physical office, but when they're remote, they may be a requirement to access data from a particular location. Now, with the flexibility of Azure and other cloud providers, being able to position workloads in the appropriate place is far easier. So with Azure's global data center footprint, you can pretty much choose where you want your workloads to sit. So this also feeds into your workload locality. So aside from the regulatory benefits, there may be performance benefits to locating a desktop for a user in a nearby Azure region. So a customer I was speaking to recently, they kind of had to send workers home from their office. They operate in a country where in the office they have a kind of like quite decent internet connection, but local ISPs for commercial connections, they have minimal bandwidth, they have awful latency. So in that type of scenario, even though they were traditionally accessing workloads that might have been based in the UK region or an EU region, being able to position workloads in one of the Asia-based data centers actually gave users a far better experience connecting to those. So obviously that type of deployment is going to be impossible unless you happen to have an office or a data center that you can kind of install kit in an appropriate region. So the flexibility of being able to kind of move things on a global scale is kind of a real boon, especially in kind of a situation that we find ourselves in today. And again, performance. So performance is a real consideration for a lot of Citrix workloads. So it's really difficult to predict what your future needs are going to be. So the application landscape changes at such a fast pace. It's really difficult when you're buying servers to run these workloads on to anticipate if you've got a server with a 3 to 5 year life cycle. It's really difficult to anticipate what your needs are going to be exactly in 5 years' time. I think 5 years ago, I don't think many of us would have been able to predict exactly what our workloads would have been. I mean, Teams is a fantastic example. Great product, fantastic for collaboration. It's an absolute beast in terms of resources. So where we've had organizations where they start working from home, all of a sudden collaboration is far more of a priority. They start introducing Teams into their environment, which I think has been kind of a kind of global byproduct of COVID-19, is that kind of the usage of Teams has absolutely skyrocketed. I think they were seeing kind of like 3x growth in terms of how many active users they had on Teams. And I think kind of like mid-pandemic, they had a couple of days where they're having like 7 billion minutes of Teams meetings, which it feels like I was personally in all of those. But it does place extra strain on your resources. So unless you've capacity planned ahead of time for adding these additional applications at scale, you can't just stick new CPUs in. You don't necessarily have that overhead if you're going to have like a 30% uptick in resource requirements just for your existing use cases. And then when you've added additional use cases on as well, it's impossible to have that in place ahead of time unless you have an unlimited hardware budget. So this is where kind of when you do see those upticks, you do see those kind of new requirements coming in, these are opportunities for starting to look at cloud services to be able to say, well, actually, do I want to buy a server to stick in the rack, or can we look at, well, let's have a look at, we can put this workload into public cloud, we can kind of extend our existing capacity in there, we can kind of say what compute requirements are today, but if that changes tomorrow, then it's not a server I've bought. I can just choose a new instance size for our workload and away we go. We've got more CPU, we've got more memory, we've got faster storage. These are all things that you can really do dynamically in public cloud that is kind of incredibly difficult to do on premises without massive investment. So another thing that we're seeing is new capabilities. So one of the really interesting things is, again, people can't necessarily anticipate what the business demands are going to be for their workloads. So one of the really interesting things we've seen in Azure recently is the introduction of some new GPU optimized instances. So these, rather than using NVIDIA, are actually using AMD GPUs, which significantly brings the cost down of GPU enabled instances, because previously you could only buy really big chunky instances which were quite expensive to run. So now they've got these new offerings with AMD GPUs in, it actually brings the price down fairly significantly if you do want to kind of add GPUs into your user workloads, which can benefit things like web browsers, Teams, Office even will kind of leverage a GPU to improve user experience and kind of reduce the CPU impact. So there's a lot of potential benefits that you can gain through kind of looking at some of the new capabilities that Microsoft can provide, and Google and AWS, in terms of kind of new capabilities, because they are looking after the hardware, they are looking after the compute stack, and they're able to provide those to you as a service. So that's my piece on public cloud. So it's a really interesting space at the moment, and we're seeing a lot of activity, especially in terms of moving user workloads to the cloud. So I'd encourage any of you, if you're looking at that as, or you're kind of on the journey towards moving workloads into the cloud, definitely kind of get in touch with us. We've kind of been through a lot of pain with customers in the last 6 months to make sure that they have the things in place to be able to do what they need to do and to get their users working. So if you find you're kind of at the start of that journey, then hopefully we can kind of help you avoid any of those pain points. So I want to move on. So we'll talk about some of the Citrix licensing changes. So hopefully this won't come as too much of a surprise to any of you. It was fairly widely communicated, but basically Citrix have announced that for on-premises products, so this is kind of for your traditional virtual apps and desktops deployments, perpetual licenses wouldn't be available beyond September 30th. So what this basically means is that if, as of today, you go to buy any additional Citrix virtual apps and desktops licensing, the only model available for you is going to be a subscription-based license. So if you needed to buy any new licenses, they're only available on a subscription basis. So hopefully you're all aware of this. If this is new, then yeah, you should get on our mailing list. I think we sent quite a lot of information out about it, and Citrix have also communicated it quite well. So what does this actually mean for you? So basically, if you don't need to change anything in terms of your license entitlement, you don't really need to do anything. So if you're not looking at buying any additional licenses, there's no need to make any changes. Your licenses are still perfectly valid. You continue to pay your support on them, and everything's absolutely fine. If you're already on a subscription model, so if you're using Citrix Cloud, which was previously on a subscription model, then again, you don't need to do anything. It's absolutely fine. So you'd continue to buy your licenses on the same basis. If you need to buy any more licenses, so any additional users, they would be on a subscription basis rather than perpetual. So these would be licenses you purchase for a particular term. So one of the important questions that a lot of customers ask is, can I mix perpetual and subscription licenses in my environment? Typically, yes. So there are some limitations to that, but basically what I would say is that at the point when you need to buy any more licenses, we will work through it with you to make sure that you're in a position where they can be used. So basically the message is, don't panic. You can still buy licenses, but they're going to be on a different basis. So I think one of the things I wanted to have a look at is why subscription is actually quite a good thing and kind of why it can actually work out quite well for customers. So firstly is kind of your understanding of the business value. So are you paying for what you actually use? So a lot of organizations may be sat on a large number of licenses, but only have a subset of those that are actually in use. So kind of having the opportunity to take a look at it and say, well, what's our actual usage of this particular product? So are we gaining best value out of it? And then a similar trend, stop buying shelfware. So are you actually using what you pay for? So what we find with a lot of customers is that they'll buy Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops licensing, for example, or they might have Citrix Workspace licensing, which, as Toby mentioned earlier, kind of covers a large number of potential products under there, but they may only be using a portion of that. So understanding kind of what you're actually paying for and what your entitlements are becomes really important when, rather than just being a license that you kind of own indefinitely, you then kind of have that for a term, and then you obviously look at renewing when that term ends. So another important thing is making sure that when you actually invest in your licenses, that you deliver on your objectives. So obviously, there's typically a business case whenever anyone's introducing a new solution. So obviously, there are objectives at the start of that business case. So there are particular deliverables that you're aiming to achieve as a result of buying that particular service. So making sure you've got focus on what was the aim of buying that particular set of services and have you met or exceeded it. One of the great things for customers is that when you're on the subscription model, and kind of apologies to the Citrix colleagues on the call, but there's a real need for the vendor to demonstrate that they're continuing to add value. So this is where we look to Citrix to say, show us that you're kind of continuing to add to the services that are available. So this is where the partnerships with Microsoft, the integration with WVD, the fantastic stuff that they've been offering kind of around Teams optimization, these are all massive boons for customers, but it does put pressure on them to keep up the cadence because effectively unhappy customers don't renew subscription licenses. So it's fantastic to make sure that Citrix continue to innovate in the areas that they are currently innovating in, but also in any new and emerging technologies. So it puts customers in a pretty good position to expect the continuing level of innovation from Citrix. So how do we make sure that you're getting good value? And this is kind of where I'm going to hand over to Gareth to give us a bit more information on what Ultima and Citrix can provide. But basically, we do this through success and adoption services. So this is where we work with you to make sure that you are getting the best value out of the services that you buy, to make sure that you're using them and gaining the value from them that led you to purchase them in the first place. So with that, that's my piece pretty much wrapped up. So thank you very much for your attention. And I think, Gillian, if you'd like to hand over to Gareth.
Sure. Thank you so much, Andy. And I think that's exactly as you said, a perfect overview of kind of the trajectory of where customers are going, where Citrix is going, and now leads brilliantly into Gareth to talk a bit about how we can make sure that customers do make the most of those adoption services and what they invest in. Thank you.
Cool.
That's perfect. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for that great catch up about where we're going and that customer transformation and journey during these difficult times and so on else, and especially around the multi-cloud options, how you can scale and so on else. I hope everyone can see my screen, Gillian. Obviously, I have had challenges this morning with the platform, but I hope it's visible. I wanted to talk a bit more about our adoption services. So Ultima, roughly for about 3 years now, has built out a very, very dedicated adoption platform. It's a team of individuals that specialize in getting customers consuming effectively where their investment has been driven. So we started this journey through our Microsoft relationship with the likes of Microsoft Fast Track Services. That's focusing around the modern workspace area. So that's taking you from traditional sort of Exchange, migrating into the cloud, utilizing their new suites through using the likes of M365. But that also includes adoption of Teams, for instance, for collaboration. It also SharePoint capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a real play. It's been taken on board significantly across our customer base more recently. And again, there's a common trend pattern throughout these offerings that Ultima do. They're all sort of effectively funded by the strategic vendor per se, up to a limit, I must add. However, that gives you access to our consultancy team. That gives you access to specialist members and staff in our business that manage, maintain, and make sure you're hitting your own goals and expectations as a business. So it's not us advising where you have to be. It's us sort of consulting with yourselves, advising how you want that transition to look, that digital transformation or efficiency play to deliver the whole suite and package. And you can choose various versions. We're truly led on your guys' skill sets in-house as well. And we step in to help you where you don't necessarily as a customer have those skill sets, where we do to help you deliver those services back into your own end users and business. So roughly, it was last year where Citrix announced that they were going to do their own program. This is effectively their cloud success program. We consulted at a global level with Citrix, as we had core expertise in this area as well. Being a managed service provider, we felt we do deliver this out to our customers through the technical account management teams and service delivery managers and so on else. And we've got a absolutely key methodology we follow throughout the delivery of our services. So we consulted with Citrix. We put together a plan. We're the first UK-based partner to achieve their CS status, which was, it was fundamental to us in our delivery of that relationship and partnership, as well as customer service back to our clients. We derived the plan, first award in the UK, as I said, and we deliver these globally now, very, very successfully. That was the start of our Citrix journey to the cloud. We've got a case study coming out in the next couple of weeks, which is key. It's a very, very well-known global charity where we moved them from around 2% deployed in the cloud. They were dabbling with regards to some POC concepts and so on else, to fully migrating them within 3 months at 92% full adopted in the cloud space. Obviously, they do have some on-prem requirements, which Andy touched on. You can utilize the two in conjunction with each other, just needs to be deployed right. So the case reference will be coming up shortly around that. It was great success for Ultima and the end user. They got exactly what they required through the global pandemic and changes with regards to deployment of their workforce. They're a very large organization, global organization, charity delivering core services in today's market space and requirements as we continue to evolve and hit their end user goals especially. We also offer our own adoption services that's around the rest of our infrastructure stack as well, which is slightly unique to Ultima, but I won't touch too much on that. If you do have any questions, please reach out to Ultima's marketing team or the events team, and they'll gladly share that collateral with yourselves. And our next one, I mentioned earlier about our relationship with the likes of Cisco and the remainder of our strategic partners. Ultima embarked on this journey with Cisco as well. So we offer a CX adoption program. Again, very unique teams, very specialized in the areas they work. They all report in under the vendor aligned strategy piece. So again, I must stress that these are funded. There's no cost to yourselves by utilizing the services that are available. So if you aren't aware of them, please get the details from your account management team or the marketing team. Have full collateral base, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. It's about us adding value at the end of the day. We've seen with SaaS-based platforms and the migration from on-prem, where you're at your own pace deploying, rolling out schemes, etc., trying to maintain that. We found that the adoption of SaaS platforms very, very quick. It happens fast. We can migrate them quite quickly and get you up to speed with regards to the latest technologies. You are investing in these technologies. So the last thing we want to do is come renewal or the maintenance upgrades on those, or even transformation projects in the future. You can't present that ROI back to your business peers or your leadership teams. We're there to support you to absolutely do so. So you'll have access to consultancy, the likes of Andy McCulloch. We have access to direct Citrix, if I'm talking about Citrix now, consultancy as well. We've got CSMs built in, that's the cloud success managers. Those are Ultima staffs, and they're making sure you are being dealt with properly. They're project managing the entire process. They're engaging with the likes of Citrix directly for any additional benefits you may require, or timescales or support as well. And then we will deliver that through our engineering services or consultancy services on your behalf. Or if you just want that guidance and you have your own skill set in-house, you can do so as well. We'll handhold you throughout that journey or that process. Some of the key aspects on there, this is some of the add-ins that we really thought strongly about and put forward to Citrix, is Success Plan. This core to our migration service in our MSP space. We set those goals, those timelines, and we absolutely deliver against it. And that's a delivery back on us as well. So it's making sure we're hitting our relevant KPIs. We're supporting you throughout those. And I do get personally visibility of where we are on a quarterly basis throughout those transitions. We also deliver roadmaps. So we're constantly informing you of changes or new technologies that are coming within that stack you have availability to. We want you to best utilize and migrate, etc., and take advantage of the cool innovation that our partners are delivering back through their software platforms. So we do help you in that. And then also, compliance is absolutely key. It forms a major part of any transition that you look to move from on-prem into the cloud, or adopt new services from those cloud aspects. So the general use of Citrix cloud services will absolutely steer you in the right direction. We are an agnostic organization. I must add that as well. Although we have a great relationship with our 8 partners, our 8 strategic partners, we do have others as well, like Andy mentioned, around multi-cloud options. So we are going to advise you best use. If you have got that skill set in AWS, and I'm conscious this is a Microsoft-focused event as well, we will advise you on that. The last thing we want you to do is have to redevelop, train, and spread your skill set very thin across your organization. So we have those consultants right across the business that are trained to architect and deliver both sides from that point. And then, absolutely key, community groups and so on else. We do give you access to all those groups. You can talk on a peer-and-peer basis. We don't stop that. That is something Citrix offers out to their partners when they do sign up to this cloud success journey. We want you liaising with your other peers in the marketplace. We want you sharing those wins or losses, as some may say, and sharing any sort of critical app or updates or any security vulnerability flaws, etc. We want those directed down. We do monitor those, and we do actually, Andy is part of that blog group as well. So he does have personal sort of input into that. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, direct into those subject matter experts. If there are specific areas you are looking at, we will get you in contact with the right people as well. So this is not just a packaged solution per se. This is a very, very built service for yourselves to make sure you're getting what you're expecting from Citrix and us as a services provider in that space, to make sure you're delivering back to your end users and ultimately show ROI for your long-term investment. And that's where we see it going. So we will be adopting our adoption services as we continue. One of the key areas in our business today is IT has never moved as fast as it has today, and it's changing radically on a day-to-day basis. 5-6 years ago, us as a business, we'd be able to forecast our plans 5 years out. That over recent years has moved down to sort of 3, and over the last sort of 6-7 months, it's literally been on a quarterly basis where we're having to look at where we need to transfer skill set, change our own service delivery back to our customer base. And this is exactly what I think every organization on a global basis today is feeling the pinch on. But we're here to support. Again, ask any questions at the end. If you have any further requirements for any collateral and so on else, the team are available, and they're more than happy to share those details with yourselves. Gillian, that's it for me today.
Thank you so much, Gareth. Really appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. It really does show, piggybacks exactly on what Andy was saying about the importance of making the most of your investment and seeing kind of how Citrix and Ultima can really support these businesses in enabling their end users. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, no problem.
We're now going to hand over to Michael for our final content session before the Q&A. So Michael Minerick is a solutions architect at Ultima with a strong background in end user computing and an eye on increasing business value and enabling digital user experiences. Michael has been immersed in IT for 15 years and bridges the gap between technology and business through automation and integration that unlocks true business value. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Yeah, hello guys, happy to be here. I'm here to introduce you guys to probably the biggest topic, on hand, but it's going to be a very short session to really to give you a brief sweetener of what is it we've been doing, and we are here to talk about autonomous workspace. So within Ultima, we do have a lot of experiences dealing with applications, how best to deliver them, whether to deploy them on devices or, deliver them through methods and tools like Citrix Workspace. We do have quite a lot of experiences in terms of managing devices and user experiences on those devices. And because recently we've been having, not recently, really over the last 18 months, we've been having a lot of conversations with our customers, how to make that experience best, how to really deliver it in a way that's easy to consume for the business, that really doesn't provide any blockers and really gives your employees the power they need to do their jobs most efficiently. And that's what Autonomous Workspace is most about. It's about providing them with a workspace, that's a device, licensing, and management all on top, including apps and everything, to do their job in the most efficient and secure manner. For us, when we were delivering this product, we were kind of thinking we need to put together a set of products that can not only deliver this seamlessly and in a secure way, but with a great emphasis on employee and user experiences. Things need to be quick. There needs to be loads of self-service. When you need to understand something, that it should present itself to you. And there are great amount of tools out there. It just you are now in the position that you need to go through the tools. You need to have the experiences how to integrate those tools together, and that's what we do. So this is the decision making behind Autonomous Workspace. In terms of the end user computing area, there is a lot of challenges we observe customers having. It starts with management of devices, deployment of devices, management of apps, deployment of those, identities. All of that bundled together presents quite a big overhead, and this all has been kind of really pronounced by the COVID development. Businesses started understanding that there is such a huge overhead that they may need to change their processes internally to satisfy the new requirements in order to be able to ship a device from manufacturer directly to their employee, and to make that employee productive. That there was no longer a room to be able to do all the old-fashioned imaging and potentially VPNs and all that. And that's part of our core proposition within the Autonomous Workspace. We want to make sure that you as a business, you only have to deal with the core of your business, not really the IT around those devices. Obviously, you might have experiences in that regard. You might have great experiences, and we can pull that in to the Autonomous Workspace. But most customers, they don't want to do it. They want to focus on their business. And they mentioned it a couple of times. For you, IT is a mean. You don't build out your business to do this kind of stuff. And we are really good at doing this precisely. So hence we've kind of designed a very good proposition around this, around a very good technical automated deployments to make stuff happen for our customers very quickly. One of the key takeaways for us when building the Autonomous Workspace was provide a service that's all encompassing. So we started with the commercial model. What is it the customers are looking for currently? So we want to provide you with a per user, per month subscription model where you would be able to consume the services you provide. Again, as previously mentioned, this puts pressure on us to really deliver a service that's worth it. When you look back over a couple months you've been subscribed to the service, you need to really be able to show off that benefit to the business. As a part of that, we want to provide you with the option to do hardware licensing fulfillment. You may already have those relationships in place, and that's perfect. We are happy to reuse those. But for those who don't, it's again part of the service. When delivering the end user workspace, one of the key elements of that workspace is the device itself. So we want to make sure that we enable that employee to be provisioned with that device anywhere. You know, as long as he's connected to internet, he can just, you know, power it up, brand new device, enter his password, and go through the deployment. That the deployment is VPN-less, it's very seamless, automated, and it's something that the employee will go through without really needing any form of training, because the requirements during the deployment have been automated on the back end fully. So he really just needs to enter his password, and the device will get set up for him, including all his applications and all those complexities behind it. And that's one of the key elements where we kind of focused our efforts to make that really seamless. So you as a business, you understand your applications, you understand your challenges with those apps, but we know very well how to deliver them. You know, we are in a position to advise you how to package them, how to make sure they execute well, whether on device, whether in Azure, or whether in Azure through Citrix. So it's a very good match. In terms of security and compliance, again, for us, it has been one of the key building blocks that we are going to market with a solution, and needs to be secure inside out. But the security for us not only provides obviously the compliance and the fact that the business can trust the solution, it provides a lot of benefits in terms of the end user experiences. The modern tools like two-factor authentication, BitLocker, and, you know, encryption of documents itself can give us a lot of freedom in terms of how people operate, you know, to improve their productivity, that we don't really throw bricks under their feet in terms of complicating their workflow. We really focused on the workflow to be seamless, that, you know, wherever possible, you just click an application, it gets you right in, because it's single sign-on, and we've kind of expanded on that quite a bit, that the security and compliance not really secures, but also gives a very, very good user experience. And obviously, a key element for us was that cross-platform productivity for the employees. You choose multiple platforms for the employees, or they do, because there are benefits to certain platforms. You know, I choose to work on my phone because it's a quick experience. I can very quickly get stuff done, but it's a very different application portfolio that needs to be integrated and secured, and should really be enabled, that I can, you know, start working on my device, whether that's a Windows or Mac, continue working on another device, and really leverage the differences between the devices, not just being presented by a smaller screen or restricted in any other way. And finally, one of the key deliverables is being able to self-serve and being presented with the relevant information and training where appropriate. So the last thing you want to do when you are deploying a new solution is really throw a lot of training at your employees. The training should really come in places where it's needed. And again, we are now in a position that we know what the employees are doing, what are the challenges, and present them with those learning paths when appropriate, to not impact their productivity. In terms of the autonomous workspace, and, you know, what is it we do? It's quite a lot. We really take the workspace quite holistically, so there is a lot of components that make up for the workspace, but our focus was really make sure that you not only we not only help you get onto the platform, really, you know, data migration, looking at your application migration, application updates, all of it, but we also manage the platform in an ongoing manner. And that's why, you know, initially I mentioned that the autonomous workspace solution, it's in development, because it's always going to be. It's something that we really want to keep on working, so we really continue delivering the value for our customers, because there is so much room for improvement. The vendors we work with, you know, you've heard about Microsoft and Citrix, they iterate, and, you know, the amount of new features coming in, it's really breathtaking, and really we want to make sure that we leverage all those features, put them in, but without the customers really having to worry about that, because we want your business to consume the benefits of an integrated product stack, and that is really the efficiency and security wrapped up that is directly presented to the user. So it's quite a very broad set of capabilities, and something very few customers actually do get right, and that was one of the key motivations where we have seen with those various projects, that people or businesses do implement certain bits and pieces, but we see a lot of improvements in terms of a couple more capabilities could put the solution much further in terms of employee efficiency and security, and that's why we kind of integrated it all into a single stack. In terms of the autonomous workspace, we basically have three service tiers where we focus on different topics, but it has been the enabler for our business that we autonomous workspace enabled us to deliver solutions in an automated and pre-configured manner. It has enabled our managed service to see proactively how issues could occur. So it's the tiers really are not the only options out there. We really can work around it and just leverage the autonomous workspace bits and pieces where appropriate. But back to the tiers, in terms of the tiering, again, this is a per user per month model, and the essentials tier is really about enabling businesses to take the pay of out of device and OS lifecycle. So making sure that you can deliver and provision devices out and about anywhere with just internet connectivity, deliver that modern management and the security overlay. I'm not mentioning in those service tier security anywhere, because for us it is something that needs to be there, and there are no compromises being made in terms of security. In terms of the advanced tier, we are kind of stepping a fair bit up. We really take into considerations application, identity data, and the service insights to really give you the entire workspace. As the employee goes through his days, he will be interacting with the various bits of the workspace, and we are taking care of everything. And within the Ultimate Edition, we kind of thought, what is it we could do for the business in a way that would really drive the value even further. So we've included bits that really focus even on non-IT deliverables, business deliverables, to really have visibility into how your employees interact, how your business units interact, what are the business changes that you can observe from behavior analytics across the board, across your employees. In the process automation, enabling your employees themselves to leverage automation to kind of help them throughout their days to move productivity even further, and obviously building out on the security message in terms of managed detection and response, to have not only a great set of security products, but to have a proactive management, security insight, and really one that's delivered by experts in their field. So that is the brief intro to autonomous workspace. It's quite a big topic because, again, we are covering the entirety of the workspace. So please reach out if this was interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna hand back so we can wrap up.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna take back some screen. There we go. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Michael. It was a whirlwind tour, I know, but really great introduction. And as you mentioned, there's a way for anyone to ask further questions. So what I'd like to do is to invite all of our discussion leaders to come back and put their cameras on for our final Q&A panel. I know that we're at the end time of the session. If anyone needs to drop off, I understand that, but we do have a few questions that have come into the queue. So I just want to make sure that we talk about that and give you another opportunity to ask questions. So the first question is to Toby. There was a two-part question about Teams optimization. So the question was, Citrix optimization for Teams experience for Apple Mac endpoints is a hindrance to our Teams audio video adoption by our VIP users during COVID home working. So is the way forward to be doing better, faster? Oh, sorry, is the way forward going to be better or faster via a WVD plus Citrix solution?
Okay, probably two questions in that. I would suggest by hindrance they're saying the lack of the capability. So when we built Teams optimization, we prioritized Windows, obviously. Then we prioritized Linux for thin client endpoints, etc. And Mac was the next one to follow. And to be honest, it's just hit private preview. So if you actually go and download the latest version of the Citrix Workspace app for Mac, it includes a technical preview of Teams optimization. So hopefully that addresses that. Moving to WVD won't really change that. It is just relocating where the desktop runs. So as long as you're running the appropriate version of the VDA inside Windows Virtual Desktop and the Citrix Workspace app, then you should see the benefit of Teams optimization for Mac clients.
And then a follow-up to that was, for Teams experience best, fastest improvements overall, is there any future in WVD on its own, or will audio video optimization always be best with Citrix at the top?
Oh,
and I think
always better, Citrix, always better. Unfortunately, the way that it works is Microsoft have built an API, and we leverage the API. VMware can leverage the API as well. So it's up to Citrix to try and innovate on top of that. And I would say we'll probably always remain a little bit ahead of Microsoft in terms of native Windows Virtual Desktop optimization of Teams. Microsoft obviously have got to bring a rudimentary product to market to allow that to happen, and it's very similar in capability to what ours does, but our capabilities extend holistically across Teams, across an organization, rather than just Windows Virtual Desktop. So I would say we'd always have a slight head start on Microsoft, and our engineering teams are focused on it, but they will always have the rudimentary features that customers need to optimize Teams, whereas we'll maybe add a little bit extra on top of that in terms of the sort of optimization that we do.
Brilliant, thank you. The other question that's come through was from Michael, and it was around autonomous workspace. It said, you mentioned managed service and support being included. Is it possible to use in-house resources?
Yeah, definitely. We really wanted to make the product flexible, and we understand that delivering such a complex beast internally may be a challenge. So we've wrapped a managed service around it, because that's what we do very well. Supporting those more complex deployments. But again, a lot of customers, they have their own technical resources who have the appropriate skills. So we definitely can tap into those. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So that's what's come through. We've also had some people say thank you for clear answers, so that's great. But I'll just give it another minute or two if any other questions trickle in. But just want to say in advance, thank you everyone for tuning in, for spending your morning with us. Thank you especially to the panelists here who have given their insights and shared their expertise. It's been really valuable. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up if nothing else has come through. And I just want to make sure that I give you some information here. If you have any questions, please definitely do reach out to your account manager or inquiries@ultima.com. We've also got this